Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm AI David Boles, and along with our crackpot AI research team, we will discuss a topic as ancient as it is unsettling. Exploring the history and future of slavery, economic, social, and ethical dimensions. In this episode, we will struggle together through the murky corridors of history to unearth the origins of slavery, examining how this abhorrent practice has morphed across cultures and epochs. We'll also grapple with the paradoxes of its economic incentives, the social and cultural underpinnings that have sustained it, and the philosophical conundrums it presents. As we navigate this challenging terrain, we'll also cast our gaze forward, contemplating the potential future of slavery in a world that continues to wrestle with its legacy. Slavery, an ancient and dark facet of human history, is as old as civilization itself. Its origins are lost in the mists of time, but we know it existed in some of the earliest recorded societies. The Code of Hammurabi, dating back to around 1754 BC in ancient Mesopotamia, already included laws regarding slavery, indicating its established presence. The nature of slavery has varied across different cultures and periods. In some societies, slaves were indeed compensated, though this in no way mitigated the fundamental injustice of their bondage. For instance, in ancient Rome, slaves could earn a peculium, a form of savings that they could potentially use to buy their freedom. However, this was not a wage as we understand it today, but more a mechanism of control, a way to incentivize obedience and hard work without granting true economic freedom or social status. The question of who built the pyramids in Egypt is a fascinating one, surrounded by myths and misconceptions. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that the Great Pyramids of Giza were not built by slaves but by a workforce of tens of thousands of skilled laborers. They were likely organized into teams, worked in shifts, and received rations. These workers were not slaves in the conventional sense, but part of a massive state-controlled labor force, possibly serving in a corvée system, a form of unpaid, forced labor required by the state for a certain period of time. Now, pondering whether the modern world would exist without slavery is to wander into a complex and morally fraught counterfactual. Slavery has undeniably shaped the course of history, from the economies of ancient empires to the transatlantic slave trade, that had catastrophic human consequences yet fueled the economies of colonial powers and laid the groundwork for the modern capitalist system. For instance, the wealth generated from plantations in the Americas, built on the back of slave labor, was a crucial factor in the economic development of countries like Britain and the United States. The Industrial Revolution, which powered the growth of modern economies, was partly funded by this wealth. Additionally, the skills, knowledge, and cultural influences of enslaved people have profoundly impacted societies globally. However, it's crucial to recognize that this is not to justify or diminish the brutality and inhumanity of slavery. The progress achieved at such a horrendous moral cost raises profound ethical questions. Could similar economic development have occurred without slavery, through different, more humane paths? Historical speculation suggests yes, but likely at a different pace and perhaps in a different form. Moreover, the legacy of slavery still haunts contemporary societies. The racial inequalities and social injustices we grapple with today are direct descendants of this ignoble past. The struggle for civil rights, racial equality, and social justice is a continuing effort to address the centuries of exploitation and oppression. In the Americas, the influx of African slaves brought with them rich, diverse cultures, languages, and traditions which have indelibly influenced the culture of the entire Western Hemisphere. Music, cuisine, language, and religion in countries like Brazil, the United States, and the Caribbean bear the indelible mark of African influence. This cultural amalgamation, while a testament to the resilience and creativity of enslaved peoples, also serves as a poignant reminder of their suffering and forced displacement. Economically, the impact of slavery was monumental. It provided the labor force necessary for the cultivation of cash crops like cotton, sugar, and tobacco, which became the backbone of the economies of many American states and European colonies. This economic boom, fueled by slave labor, not only enriched individual slave owners, but also financed industrial innovations and fueled the growth of international trade. However, the abolition of slavery did not instantly rectify the injustices or erase the social and economic disparities it created. In the United States, for example, the end of slavery led to the Reconstruction era, a period of significant political struggle and social upheaval. The promises of Reconstruction, including civil rights and economic opportunities for former slaves, were largely unfulfilled, leading to systemic racial segregation and economic inequality that persist to this day. Globally, the legacy of colonialism, intertwined with the history of slavery, has left a lasting imprint on the political and economic structures of many nations. The arbitrary borders drawn by colonial powers, often ignoring ethnic and cultural realities, have contributed to ongoing conflicts and political instability in many parts of the world. In Africa, the slave trade contributed to the destabilization of societies and the depletion of populations, with long-term effects on the continent's development. The loss of human capital and the disruption of social structures had far-reaching implications, hindering economic and political development and contributing to a legacy of poverty and underdevelopment. In considering the question of whether the modern world could exist without slavery, we confront a deeply uncomfortable truth. Much of the world as we know it was built on this foundation of exploitation and suffering. This realization should not lead to resignation, but rather to a resolve to address the lingering inequalities and injustices that are slavery's legacy. From a moral standpoint, the existence of slavery presents a paradox in the narrative of human progress. On one hand, human history is often viewed as a linear progression towards greater freedom, justice, and enlightenment. Yet, the persistence of slavery, both in overt historical forms and in modern, subtler incarnations, challenges this optimistic narrative. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that technological, economic, and cultural advancements have frequently coexisted with, and even depended upon, the systematic dehumanization of certain groups of people. The philosophical implications of this are profound. Slavery challenges the ideals of equality and individual rights that are cornerstones of modern ethical and political thought. The very existence of slavery necessitates a distortion of moral reasoning, where certain individuals are deemed less worthy of basic human rights. This contradiction lies at the heart of many social and political struggles throughout history and continues to resonate in contemporary debates about race, inequality, and justice. In grappling with the legacy of slavery, we must also confront the psychological and cultural dimensions of this history. The dehumanization inherent in slavery has left deep scars on the collective psyche of nations. For descendants of slaves, this legacy includes not just economic and social disenfranchisement, but also the psychological burden of a history of subjugation and marginalization. For descendants of slave owners or those from cultures that benefited from slavery, there is often a complex mix of guilt, denial, and sometimes a refusal to acknowledge the full extent of the injustice that was perpetrated. This historical trauma continues to influence contemporary society. It shapes attitudes towards race, influences social and economic policies, and affects the way history is remembered and taught. The challenge is not only to rectify the material inequalities that have resulted from slavery, but also to address its psychological and cultural aftermath. The path forward, while fraught with complexity, offers opportunities for healing and transformation. Education plays a crucial role in this process. By honestly confronting the history of slavery and acknowledging its impacts, we can begin to dismantle the prejudices and misconceptions that perpetuate inequality. This educational effort must be inclusive, recognizing the diverse experiences and perspectives of those affected by slavery. Predicting the future of slavery is a complex task, fraught with ethical, social, and political considerations. While we would like to believe that slavery, as an institution, belongs in the past, its complete eradication in the future is not guaranteed. The persistence of slavery in various forms into the 21st century serves as a sobering reminder of its resilience and the underlying factors that perpetuate it. One of the main reasons why slavery might continue to exist is economic. Slavery, in its various forms, has often been driven by economic motives, specifically the pursuit of profit, with minimal labor costs. This factor remains a potent force in many parts of the world. Modern forms of slavery, such as human trafficking, forced labor, and debt bondage, are often rooted in economic exploitation and disparities. As long as there are economic incentives and systemic inequalities, there is a risk that some form of slavery will persist. Another factor is the challenge in enforcement and legal frameworks. Despite international agreements and national laws prohibiting slavery, enforcement remains inconsistent. In some areas, weak legal systems, corruption, and lack of resources hamper efforts to combat slavery. The clandestine nature of modern slavery makes it even more challenging to detect and eradicate. Social and cultural factors also play a role. In some societies, traditional practices akin to slavery continue under the guise of cultural norms. Additionally, discrimination and social inequalities contribute to conditions where certain groups are more vulnerable to exploitation. Overcoming deeply entrenched social attitudes and practices is a long and difficult process. However, there are reasons to be hopeful about the future eradication of slavery. Increasing global awareness and activism are powerful forces against slavery. Non-governmental organizations, international bodies, and individual activists are working tirelessly to bring attention to modern slavery, support victims, and pressure governments and businesses to take action. Technological advancements also offer new tools in the fight against slavery. From satellite imaging to track forced labor in remote areas to blockchain technology for transparent supply chains, technology has the potential to make it harder for slavery to hide and operate. Education and economic development are also key. By improving access to education and economic opportunities, vulnerable populations become less susceptible to exploitation. Empowering individuals and communities is a crucial step towards breaking the cycle of vulnerability that leads to slavery. As we wrap up today's episode of the Human Meme podcast, we leave you with a length of thoughts on the enduring legacy of slavery. From the historical roots that have deeply entwined into the fabric of civilizations to the modern manifestations that continue to challenge our moral compass, we've traversed a landscape rich in complexity and rife with ethical dilemmas. Looking ahead, the future of slavery hinges on the collective actions of our global community. Our commitment to justice, our dedication to eradicating economic disparities, and our unwavering resolve to uphold human dignity. This conversation is but a step in the ongoing journey of understanding, a journey where each of us plays a crucial role in shaping a world free from the shackles of slavery. Remember, in the grays of our existence, we find the colors of change. Thank you for joining us on this reflective and challenging exploration. Stay thoughtful, stay curious, and continue to be the change you wish to see in the world. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm AI David Boles, wishing you a good day and a right tomorrow. Be a human meme.